So I want to ask you a question. I want you to really think about this. What is the first thing you think about when you hear the word work? So I've asked this question to many people over the years. And most say things like stress or monotony, a giant stack of papers piled up on their desks, pointless meetings, sacrificing their time, basically something unpleasant but necessary. I always hope that I'd see the day when the word is associated with things like satisfaction or fulfillment. When work hard is no longer perceived as putting time and energy into an undesirable act for a desired result. That's probably why when I graduated film school, I chose to define my desired result very carefully. Instead of money, it was simply about just waking up excited about the work I'm about to do. Around this time, I heard a speech by the author Neil Gaiman that had a big impact on me. Basically, he advised to imagine the life you desire at the peak of a distant mountain. And whenever life gets very confusing and you have to make difficult decisions, just ask yourself, will this choice take me closer or further away from the peak? And as long as you keep walking towards the mountain, everything will be all right. So this sounded pretty incredible to me, and it really got me thinking, what is my peak? I defined it as just making a living through my passion and contributing to the world in some sort of meaningful way. I was on a crossroad with one path leading towards this peak and another leading towards a more comfortable life with a steady paycheck and a feeling of security and a car. But since my priority was to, at all costs, avoid getting trapped in a numbing routine of uninspiring work, choosing the peak was probably the easiest decision I've ever made. I was all fired up, ready to just attack life, follow my passion, make my wildest dreams come true. Well, it didn't really work out that well. So you've probably heard the quote, do what you love and the money will follow. Yeah. Not quite that simple, right? Do what you love and fulfillment will follow is more accurate, but you can't pay your bills with fulfillment. So after about a year of struggling, I resorted to editing anything and everything I could to make me money. This included things like local car commercials, laser surgery infomercials, even family videos. I was served with a healthy dose of reality, and now I could see my options in a new light. The way that I now envisioned the crossroad had changed drastically. It was nothing like that cliche image of a road splitting into two paths that look exactly the same. Instead, one side appeared friendly, with a reward visible at the end, and the other was a dangerous path alongside a cliff, fading in and out of the fog, with giant gaps scattered along the way. And of course, this was the way to my peak. I knew that I had to take this risky path, to just embrace the struggle and explore my potential while immersing myself in work that I believe in. But I was fighting a powerful resistance that left me with paralyzing doubts. It was all in my head. It was just this voice that kept telling me, what makes you think that you're worthy of achieving far-fetched pursuits? You've tried this before, and you failed. It would start in my head and then spread throughout my whole body like this overpowering weakness. Eventually, the voice persuaded me to choose the safe path and create a failure-proof plan that will ensure financial stability. I upgraded from infomercials to the wonderful world of reality television. And 2 years later, I found myself in Los Angeles, editing some of the most popular shows on TV. I got the security that I was craving, and I felt like I reached the reward at the end of the path. everything was actually going really well, except the fact that the first thing I would think about when I woke up is the snooze button. I remember just waking up in the middle of the night, just wondering, is this really it? And it wasn't that horrible or anything. It was a very comfortable life, but it definitely wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to settle when I knew that I was capable of more. To be bored every day, just waiting for the weekend to come. I convinced myself that that's life, that's just the way it is, and carried on. Completely unaware that my legs aren't capable of walking a path that doesn't challenge them. They need to be tested. They need to be challenged. And they can't rest at night unless they feel like they deserve to. I was lucky enough to reach a point where the benefits of a weekly paycheck were no longer worth the sacrifice. I was still afraid of putting myself in a situation where I was susceptible to the pain of failure. And being afraid had always meant to retract and try to restore the feeling of safety. But this is a habit that leads us to hide from our responsibility of pursuing our true calling. I recognize that the fear exists at the same place as the peak, meaning that I'm afraid of doing the things that are most important to me. So I began seeing fear as a guide, a green light disguised as a stop sign. And whenever I felt it, I knew that what I was thinking about holds meaning and must be explored. I kept reminding myself that being susceptible to pain also means you're susceptible to possibility. The possibility of earning the endless rewards that come with shining your light instead of hiding it. So instead of avoiding fear, I began following it. And that's when the adventure began. So I still had no idea what I actually wanted to do. But I knew that I wanted to be something big, something different. My friend Harman called me up one day and told me that we have to go shoot for this event called Powellooza. Basically, it's a group of 150 Mormons who go to some river island in the middle of nowhere near the Grand Canyon and do things like blob launches, bike jumps into a river, fire rope jumping, and all-night bubble machine dance parties. That's what a blob launch looks like, if anybody's curious. So needless to say, we had the time of our lives. And we created a video that wound up getting 7 million views online. This was 2011, during the Egyptian Revolution. And I got hundreds of comments from Egyptians who saw the video as a representation of the freedom that their government had taken away from them. To me, this whole experience changed everything, because I realized that with a $0 budget, just a camera and some basic equipment, I could not only communicate with millions of people, but also I had the chance to inspire them. I created a company called Live Unbound that centered around the importance of overcoming our self-imposed limitations. I wrote a manifesto, made a series of online videos, designed posters, and built a social media community that united anyone who was striving to discover their true capabilities. The message was spreading all over the world, faster than I could ever imagine. But this path, it was definitely a very confusing one. It was actually kind of more like a maze. And I navigated through it using my fears as the trail marks. They'd often guide me to gaps, places where the trail just drops off. And I was often faced with the dilemma to either turn back or take a leap. I was becoming more and more comfortable with taking these leaps. If I didn't know how to do something, I'd learn it. I learned web design, how to run an online store, marketing, recruiting, designing, creative writing, proposal writing, script writing, and many other tasks I had no previous experience with. Actually, I think that the most exciting part about what I do is that I really have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just kind of learning as I go. I definitely made a lot of mistakes, but for the most part, it was working. Before I knew it, the Live Unbound message had reached over 8 million people from 125 different countries. And it was such a rewarding experience. It was different. It was unique. It was exactly what I was searching for. After about a year, I reached a point where the gaps became too far apart to leap. This had to do with monetizing. Up until this point, I was funding everything with my reality TV money, which was almost gone. But I struggled in finding an avenue for profit that didn't hurt the integrity of the message behind the brand. So this is where I froze, stuck in between where I was and where I wanted to be. I couldn't bring myself to turn back and walk further away from the peak. So I just circled around the charted territory, unable to find the inspiration I needed to create. I missed the stability of my old life. All the excitement was gone and replaced with a feeling of defeat. So I decided to take a break. I turned around and walked in the opposite direction in an effort to reclaim the comfort I had built in the past. And as I backtracked to a place where I could rest and gain perspective, I realized how crucial it is to have balance in a venture like this. I came across the work of the psychologist John Dotson, who introduced the concept of the comfort zone back in 1908. And he found what we've probably heard hundreds of times by now, which is that a state of comfort produces a low level of development. And in order to maximize progress, we must be in a state of relative anxiety, a place where our stress levels are slightly higher than normal. So this is our optimal anxiety zone. This is where you want to be, and it exists just outside of our comfort zone. Now the thing is that if you venture too far, then you'll reach a point where stress and anxiety levels are too high to be productive. And I like to call this the freaking out zone. And it's a place that I'm very familiar with. Slowly but surely, I was finding my optimal anxiety. I learned that sometimes in the confusing journey towards the peak, backtracking is progress. I picked up some TV editing gigs and regained financial stability. Feeling recharged, I decided it's time to revisit the obstacles that broke me in the past. This is where I'm at now, just learning how to bridge the gaps by creating the steps that don't exist. So you've probably heard that old saying, baseball is like life. And there are dozens of quotes comparing the sport to everyday struggles. But the major difference is that in life, you're not out when you get 3 strikes. We each have an unlimited amount of chances to calibrate for a home run. I try to take the time to assess each miss and make any necessary adjustments. But I promise myself that I choose to swing hard. Once in a while, everything just aligns perfectly and I get a hit. It doesn't change everything, but it's one step built on a bridge that will eventually make the gap passable. For example, our last short documentary was licensed by GoPro and the Discovery Channel. And we just found an investor for our next documentary. Every step that I've created is a result of following a fear. Even though I fully believe that they'll guide me to new opportunities, following them hasn't gotten any easier. I'm often tempted to just veer away from the challenges ahead, doubting that I'll be able to bridge the gaps. But I stay on course because I believe that having a worthy pursuit is less about accomplishing it and more about the incredible life you're given by pursuing it. Just striving towards the peak means that I'm living a life that's in line with who I really am. I'm waking up excited every day. And the first thing that I think about when I hear the word work is gratification, discovery, and self-actualization. Thank you.